Silence. It's louder than any word you could send. And the moment you stop texting her, everything changes. Not in weeks, not in days. Instantly. Because whether she shows it or not, something deep within her psychology is triggered the second your absence begins to speak louder than your presence ever did. You see, attention is currency in the modern age, and she knows exactly how much of it you've been spending on her. Every text you sent, every double message, every good morning or how was your day, that went ignored. It wasn't just conversation, it was investment, emotional labor, time you can never get back. But when you stop texting her, truly stop, you pull that energy back. And in that vacuum, she feels it, not just emotionally, psychologically, subconsciously, because women don't chase attention, they chase the loss of it. Not because they're manipulative, not because they're cruel, but because the feminine psyche is built to desire certainty through contrast. When you were always available, she never had to wonder. She never had to think about you because you were always right there, handing yourself over like a gift already unwrapped. But the moment your name stops lighting up her phone, the moment your voice disappears into stillness, her mind begins the cycle. First confusion, then curiosity, then the questions. Why hasn't he texted? Is he okay? Did I lose him? Has he moved on? That's the instant shift. It's not about ego, it's about psychology. Women are wired to feel first and rationalize later, and when your attention disappears, even temporarily, it triggers that primal signal inside her. Something has changed. You see, most men don't realize this, but consistency in pursuit, when not reciprocated, creates one-sided comfort for her and quiet resentment for him. You become the background noise of her life, always there, never valued, until you stop. And that silence, that's not nothing, that's everything, because in that silence, she starts to reflect, not on you necessarily, not at first, but on the imbalance, on the way she got used to being the prize without ever earning it. Now, don't misunderstand. This isn't about playing games. It's not about withholding to punish. It's about reclaiming emotional balance. Because when you stop texting her, you stop bleeding attention. You stop sending the unconscious message that your self-worth is tied to her response. And that shift, that moment where you detach, that's when she starts to notice what she's lost. Not because you're trying to be missed, but because you're no longer offering yourself as an option she doesn't have to choose. That's the moment when power returns to you. Not power over her, power over yourself. Because texting is never just texting, it's a signal of interest, a declaration of need, a small way of saying, I'm still here, I still care, I'm still hoping. But when you stop, that signal vanishes. And with it, so does her certainty. And in relationships, certainty kills desire. Mystery feeds it. That's why the second you go quiet, truly quiet, her mind has no choice but to fill in the blanks, because nature hates a vacuum, and the feminine mind hates uncertainty. She'll go through emotional stages, subtle, often unspoken, but deeply felt. First, a flicker of surprise, then a mental rewind, retracing the last few conversations, scanning for signs she may have missed. Next comes the ego hit, not because she misses you yet, but because the attention she expected is no longer there. And ego, when bruised, starts grasping. That's when she might scroll through your messages, look at your stories, check your status, quietly, privately. She won't message yet, but the attention shifts, because now she's the one thinking. And the longer you stay silent, the louder your absence becomes. Men don't realize how powerful their withdrawal is. They think silence is passive, but silence, when chosen, not out of weakness, but from emotional discipline, becomes a statement louder than any words could ever be. It says, I don't need you to validate me. I'm no longer chasing breadcrumbs. I respect my own peace more than your half-hearted replies. And that changes everything. You see, the feminine mind is built on emotional pacing. When a man texts first, texts often, and never lets go, he sets the rhythm. But when he stops, she's forced to reset hers. And if there was even a flicker of attraction, interest, or emotional connection, she will feel it, she will notice it, and eventually she will respond to it. Not always with a message, sometimes with behavior, sometimes with silence of her own. But make no mistake, the moment you stop texting her, something inside her shifts. And here's where most men mess it up. They wait, they stop texting, but they watch the clock. They think 3 days and she'll text, or if I stop texting, she'll come running. That's not detachment, that's manipulation, and women feel that. True emotional power isn't in pretending to be distant, it's in actually letting go, not to hurt her, but to free yourself. Because if you stopping texting her causes her to leave permanently, she was never emotionally invested to begin with. If your silence gets met with more silence, that's not a loss, that's clarity. But if your silence creates curiosity, concern, and a slow reversal of energy, then you'll witness something rare, her beginning to chase. Because women don't chase presence, they chase absence that used to feel secure, and that's when things get interesting. She'll test it first, maybe a story reaction, maybe a hey out of nowhere, maybe a breadcrumb. And here your emotional discipline is tested again, because the goal was never to manipulate her response. The goal was to stop betraying your own. And so when she reaches out, you have a choice. Respond immediately and the energy resets, or wait, feel, assess, and respond from strength, not desperation. Because now you're not reacting, you're choosing. And in that choice, you reclaim what most men give away far too easily: self-respect. The truth is, most modern men overtext out of fear. Fear of losing her, fear of missing out, fear of being forgotten. But the irony? That same fear is what drives women away, because the more you try to hold her, the more she slips. The more you cling, the more she pulls. And the more you chase, the less she values. But stop texting her, truly stop, and a new dynamic forms. Not always romantic, not always successful, but always revealing. It shows you what she's really made of, not just how she responds, but if she responds. And either way, you win, because you'll no longer be stuck in the loop of waiting for validation that never comes. You'll be free from the constant need to check in, stay relevant, or keep her interested. You'll have stepped into the rarest space a man can enter in the modern world: peace without performance, where you don't need her to reply, you don't need closure, you don't need anything outside of yourself to feel okay. And in that energy, calm, certain, unattached, you become the very thing she once wished you would be. Not emotional background noise, not the guy always available, but the man who walks away without a word when his effort is no longer respected. That's when everything changes. Because women, even the most independent ones, feel the pull of certainty disappear. And in that void, they're left with the question, did I lose something I didn't even realize I valued? That question, that's what makes her think. Not your texts, not your calls, your absence. Not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you finally stopped pouring into someone who never filled your cup. That's the instant shift. That's the power of silence. Not because it's loud, but because it's final. And in a world full of men who won't stop texting, the man who does becomes unforgettable.